And now, after all these remarkable keynote speeches that we had in the morning, IEA Chief Economist Dr. Fatih Birol will be presenting panel number 1, which is Energy Security, Expectations of Governments from G20, with forum-invited speakers, Her Excellency Ana Palacio, Member of the Council of the State, Kingdom of Spain, His Excellency Gabor, Ambassador of Hungary to Turkey, Ms. Melanie Kenderdine, Energy Counselor of the Secretary, Department of Energy, US, His Excellency Dr. Sergiy Korsunskiy, Ambassador of Ukraine to Turkey, and His Excellency Dr. Walter Steinmann, State Secretary for Energy, Switzerland. Thank you.
Thank you, Doğan Bey, and once again, good morning to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. So in this session, we thought we should discuss with different important players in the global energy governance what they would expect from the G20 in Turkey this year. So we will have two main questions. One, I would like to ask all the colleagues here, what are their personal or from the institutions they represent, their expectations from G20, and then I will go in the second round to more country-specific questions or the issues I will raise with them. So perhaps I can start with Ana, with you. You were a remarkable Minister of Foreign Affairs many, many years, and you are the member of the Council of State of Spain, and Spain is a very important energy player in Europe and beyond. What do you expect from the G20 from Turkey Presidency, Ana?
Well, thank you, Fatih. First, let me just, as I'm not any longer in government, and this gives you a certain freedom, turn the question on its head. And paraphrasing President Kennedy, say, really, don't ask what you, government, don't ask what the G20 can do for you, but what you can and you have to do through the G20. And in this context, what Turkey, as presidency, what our expectations from Turkey on this huge collective challenge of, as President Sabanci said before, to have sustainable, uninterrupted, and affordable energy for all. And if you turn the question this way, of course, the first thing that we have is Turkey. Turkey, it has been said before, just let me just remind, you have this geopolitical strategic position. It's a European presidency, after a Russian presidency, after an Australian presidency, and then the presidency goes back to Asia. And I mean, we know that there have been debates on Turkey picking up sub-Saharan Africa instead of other regions, and that you have agreed that other presidencies will pick up. It's important. This is a European presidency because our connection, and by the way, this is too with the United States, we know we have a challenge there. But Turkey is also this regional hub of, and on gas, it's obvious, and I won't go on it. By the way, Enagas is in TAP, in the Trans-Adriatic, which is the TANAP continuation to Europe. Enagas, the Spanish company. But I think that you are a hub in two big tensions. And let's just name the elephant in the room. One of them is Russian tensions. The other one is Middle Eastern tensions, which gives you, because of your position, because of your partners, your alliances, because your relations with the United States, how, I mean, your negotiations with the European Union, you know that I'm convinced that we have to negotiate in good faith, that Turkey in the European Union is an interest of the European Union. But you know very well the shortcomings of the European Union, and this will give you assets in this presidency. And of course, I will mention the time it has been said, this run-up of COP21, but I will mention your diplomacy. And it's not just because Ambassador Sergiy was ambassador to Spain. I think that Turkish diplomacy can do a lot there. And why do I say Turkish diplomacy? Because frankly, G20, I mean, the relevance of G20 is just, I wouldn't say that it's questioned, but it has to be revamped. The G20 is a non-institution getting together that has to be more than a talk show. And frankly, the challenge here is governance, is just the challenges of governance. And I will mention that this, the Australian presidency has highlighted this in the efficiency initiative, saying that there is a challenge to put certain order in all the institutions in the world that address energy. And frankly, Fatih, I'm among those that just count on you as, I'm quoting once more President Sabanci, not just as to foster strategies, but also to just call a cat and de-ideologize the discourse that is many times ideologized. And by this, by putting order in all these myriad of institutions that address energy, have some coherence out of what is too many times cacophony. But this is not the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge are the institutions. The institutions, to start with just the Bretton Woods institutions, because in order to achieve this sustainable, affordable, and uninterrupted energy for all, we need to address governance. And what we have on the G20, in the same way that you reminded, or Kimberly reminded, that it was President Obama that highlighted the importance of addressing subsidies in 2009, and frankly, not much has happened. We need to have a follow-up. We need that Bretton Woods institutions, for instance, pick up on there. But in order for that, in 2010, in Seoul, there was decided that there should be a revamping of these institutions. The G20 should and can, and I hope that you push this forward, not just deciding that in Seoul that the Europeans will give up 2 seats, but really take a decision of saying, well, we have asked that a meeting of the board of the World Bank and the IMF and the relevant other banks I don't mention, or institutions that I don't mention, but are there, that they meet, and we have given instruction to reorganize the governance, to have a governance that reflects the world of today and not the post-World War II. And for that, you cannot have any given moment 8 Europeans around the board table and just now 2 Africans, 2 sub-Saharan Africans. Doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense, and I'm sorry, United States cannot just veto or try to keep the veto power, because what we see is the same way that we have the infrastructure Chinese initiative, we will have others, and these institutions will become irrelevant. And these institutions are the framework of the rule of law international order, and we need to bet on them. And I finish with this idea to the COP21. Copenhagen was a disaster, frankly. And it was a disaster because we couldn't agree on a binding legal. And I mean, we need a grounded, a backbone, institutional and legal framework if we are to achieve these common challenges of the world. And I finish by saying that the Turkish presidency, because of its tradition, because of its links, because of its regional just projection, you are well placed to have this G20 really not disappoint the citizens of the world, which unfortunately, until now, it's a lot what has been happening.
Thank you very much, Anna. Now I move to Hungary. Hungary is at the very center of Europe. So what would be your expectations? You are not a G20 country, but the decisions, directions at the G20 meetings may well have implications for countries like Hungary. What would be, Ambassador, your expectations from G20 in Turkey?
Well, thank you very much, Fatih Bey, and thank you, first of all, for inviting us to participate in this fruitful panel conversation. It's always a great pleasure to be back to Istanbul in front of my former colleagues, a lot of them, and also in front of my current colleagues from Ankara. It's a great pleasure and an honor. Your Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, let me thank the organizers for the 6th International Energy Forum for this excellent meeting and the very choice of the subject. I believe that each and every participant brings a new approach to the table. Our conclusions today might offer food for thought to the G20 leaders as well. Hungary, as a member state of the European Union, aims to contribute to the enriching discussions. Let me refer to the 5 agenda points discussed at the G20 Energy Sustainability Working Group meeting earlier this year in February in Antalya, which you also referred, Fatih Bey, in your opening remark, namely access to energy for all, energy efficiency, market transparency, renewable energy, inefficient fossil fuel subsidies. They all have something in common, a forward-looking philosophy. This very general characteristic of the Turkish G20 presidency can be expressed best by the words of Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoğlu, who described it in December at the Atlantic Council Energy and Economic Summit by saying that energy should not be seen as a weapon for conflicts, it should be seen as a facilitator to further improve the well-being of people. I welcome these priorities. In our quickly changing political and economical environment, geopolitical turbulences show that when planning for the future, we need to focus more on energy security as one of the bases of our economic activity and social welfare. The presidency program, the Turkish presidency program, emphasizes the importance of the issue of energy access and energy investment. As Mrs. Sabancı also mentioned in her opening remark, 1.3 billion people do not have access to reliable energy today. Natural disasters destroy transmission systems and deprive people from their basic needs. Let me express our sincere sympathies to the families and friends of the victims who suffered or lost their life during the latest terrible disaster in Nepal. It is our moral obligation to aim to find solutions to make energy accessibility a reality and reasonably priced energy achievable, at least for the vulnerable groups of consumers. Ladies and gentlemen, you are all aware of the forecast of the International Energy Agency. Energy export-import relations will considerably change in the future. Countries that used to be the biggest importers will become exporters, while the domestic energy demand increase will influence the export capacities of others. The biggest importers will undoubtedly be the Asian countries, especially China. 65% of the energy demand increase will happen in Asia until 2035. The European Union's energy import dependency is going to increase, while the EU's share in the global energy demand will decline. The EU needs to complete internal market integration and significantly strengthen energy diplomacy with key supplier and transit countries. The February 4, 2011 European Council dedicated to energy and innovation was an outstanding event of the Hungarian EU presidency. Heads of states and governments called for the completion of a truly interconnected internal energy market by 2014. They also highlighted the importance of energy efficiency as well as the need for a more coordinated approach vis-à-vis third countries. 3 years later, the concept of the Energy Union was presented. However, there are still a lot to do. At a regional level, this process can also apply to partner countries outside the EU. For instance, the members of the energy community that serves as the EU's vehicle for countries of the wider region to join the integrated EU energy market. It is also undisputably that there is a strong interdependence between exporters of energy and importers all over the world. We need to reinforce our cooperation with supplier and transit countries. Diversification means more ties with more countries. Energy cooperation is mutually beneficial. Hungary aims to broaden its energy relations with the countries in the Caspian region, in the Eastern Mediterranean, and in the Middle East as well. Hungary also intends to implement its policy of opening up towards the east and towards the south, and wishes to strengthen political and economic ties with the countries of Southeast Asia, Africa, and Latin America as well. These regions, in our view, will become key players while they are expected to have the biggest growth in energy consumption in the world in the next decades, as we just saw in the previous presentations. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, energy security is a precondition for sustainable economic growth. Therefore, it is one of our main priorities. Energy security is often associated with conflicts, but energy security can become an important avenue for cooperation as well. Actually, the security of supply of any of our countries cannot be guaranteed without cooperation, but can be and should be strengthened with more collaboration. In this spirit, I am very much looking forward to a fruitful discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Now, just one data point I wanted to share with you, and the one fact. Perhaps I should have said it during my presentation. Both Madame de Palacio and the Ambassador mentioned the Africa issue, an Africa energy access issue that Turkey is going to work on. And if I ask many of us, which country has the highest energy investments in Africa? Is it Europe? Is it United States or Japan? None of them. If you add all of them, Europe plus all European countries plus Japan plus United States, they are only 1/4 of the Chinese energy investments in Africa. Just to put the importance of China in the African energy access, a country which is going to be the host of next G20 meeting. Now, let me turn to Melanie. Melanie just flew from Hamburg, if I'm not wrong, at the G7 meeting, another summit and the G7 energy ministers meeting. Melanie, if I may ask you, what is your expectation from the G20 meeting in Turkey?
As I mentioned in my talk, the G7 energy ministers continue to focus on energy security and a broad and collective definition of energy security. I would hope at the G20 that the principles that the G7 adopted to broaden and collectivize that definition of energy security is considered and adopted. So that, to me, is very important. Something else I think that we need to think about, and I've been spending a fair amount of time, it's what we do. My office is Energy Policy and Systems Analysis, is recognize that these are all systems, and they are globally, and they are very interconnected systems. And we need to do a lot more thinking about that. I think that helps us adopt things like a collective definition of energy security, because I think we are often connected to our systems and don't realize it. And we have just one, we're looking at some supply chain issues, and one example of that is wind turbine blades. They're manufactured largely in Europe, imported to the United States. 40% of the value of those imports goes through the Houston Ship Channel, which, as I showed you, our ports and waterways need some improving and modernizing. But those wind turbine blades have gone from about 15 meters long to the largest one in the world is 80 meters long. Just moving those around the world is an enormous logistical undertaking, and their use becomes a logistical and supply chain undertaking. Another issue that's obviously very important to us, and I think to Turkey and to Europe in general, is energy infrastructure investment. You certainly, energy infrastructure investment comes with, it creates economic value and contributes to economic development. It helps us transition to a clean energy future. But I also think it's important for political stability. We've all talked about the 1.3 billion people in the world who don't have access to energy or electricity. When I was here last year, I talked about the direct correlation between electricity consumption and the Human Development Index, and that is very related to our climate change goals. We want to give 1.3 billion people access to electricity, and but we don't want it to exacerbate greenhouse gas emissions or our climate problems. That is a tension and a major problem that I think that we need to spend a lot of time and effort focused on reducing the cost of technologies so that we can, and reducing the emissions from technologies and power generation so that we can provide access to electricity for those 1.3 billion people. And and then finally, I think that I would be remiss if going into G20 that we did not, I believe you said it, Fatih, did not have a clear focus on Paris and reaching climate goals and emissions reductions. And I think it's an existential issue, and that my hope is that G20 can focus on that as well. So.
Thank you very much, Melanie. Now, I moved to a country which is also very important for this region, but also globally, Ukraine. So we are privileged to have the Ukrainian ambassador with us. Mr. Ambassador, what would you, as Ukraine, as a transit country, a very important transit country, what would you expect from the G20 in Turkey?
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very much honored to be on such a distinguished panel and to talk about energy issues. Ukraine is not part of G20, but we are right east of the border of G20. Next year we'll enter into deep and comprehensive free trade zone with the European Union, which is a landmark development for us. We are close to negotiating a free trade with Turkey, our strategic partner. There are better speakers who can speak about global issues, and we already heard several excellent presentations. So let me concentrate more on region and Europe. We believe that G20 is about economic development, efficiency, and sustainability. And none of this can be achieved without safe and reliable energy supply. It is difficult to find better place in the region, and if you consider future of Europe and very important developments in European energy market, rather than Turkey. In front of our eyes, in recent years, Turkey has been transformed from just a consumer of energy, very important big consumer, number 2 after Germany, into extremely important transit country. We see it as a very positive development. To the contrary of some statements from so-called experts that Ukraine would like to monopolize the energy transit from East to Europe, it is not true. We are very much welcome to Turkish role as a transit country, but taking into account, first of all, the Turkish alliance with the European Union energy policy, which says that you have to diversify, first of all, sources of supply, not just routes of supply. There is no reason to have another 3 pipelines from the same sources if you cannot trust this source. But developments in Caspian Basin, we believe recent opening, the future, as quick as possible opening of Iran, if peace is established in Iraq and Turkmenistan would join the pool of Caspian countries which can supply energy resources, specifically gas, to Europe, that will change this country drastically. It will be a completely different country when it would assume this role as an energy hub. It's not an easy role, and you have to have, not just to have an infrastructure, you have to create conditions for not just suppliers, but consumers as well, for different ones to come to Turkey, to trade, to exchange, and to receive your volumes of gas. That would need much more than just pipelines. you need to have storages, you have to need LNG facilities, and so on and so forth. For example, it's obvious that Ukraine is completely against and do not understand the reason. I mean, we understand this political reason with the Turkish stream. It's, of course, the decision of the Turkish government, and this government is pretty much capable to adopt the right decisions, but we're against it. Why? Because it's simple. Because it brings nothing new to the market. It brings the same gas, but through different routes. And for those who knows geography in Turkey, that means that if you're going from Ankara to Istanbul, but you instead would be asked first to go to Konya, then to Antalya, then along the seashore to Izmir, then to take a ferry to Istanbul. So that would be the difference in between direct supply of Russian gas to Europe, rather than to divert it to Turkish territory, then to Greece, then back north to Europe, to the Baumgarten and Central European countries. We see no sense in that. And we expect that Turkey will share with G20 its experience, its very important experience in how to develop in 12 years a vibrant economy without any energy resources, actually. This country tripled GDP in 12 years. This is amazing development. So many countries in Africa, Africa has resources, but they don't know, maybe, they need an advice how to use it properly. So Turkey has this experience, and they can share it. And we believe that this summit in Antalya, I looked specifically before this conference, the schedule of G20 events with Turkish presidency is extremely impressive. So we believe that it will be another push forward into developing of a common energy policy of the countries which encompass 80% of world's GDP. We saw it on the graphs. So good luck, Turkey, in this development, and definitely it will help all of us to be part of this broader policy behind G20 as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Let me now move to a country which is something similar to Turkey, in Europe, but not a member of EU, so Switzerland. Dr. Steinmann has a very rich experience of energy, both national, regional, international. Dr. Steinmann, what would you expect from the G20 Turkish presidency?
Dear Fatih, Birol, first of all, I would thank Mrs. Sabanci and you for the invitation. For us, it's interesting to see what is discussed here in this region. And for us, it's important also to see what are the expectations for G20. Switzerland is not a member of G20. And for that, we have not an experience how it functions. Last time when we were invited to that was in 2013 when Russia was in the presidency. And that's years ago. That means a lot have changed. And also we have to look, what can we expect from G20? Is G20 more than theater? Who does the work behind the stage? It's not G20, it's not a presidency. There are international organizations like IEA, like OECD and others. They are working continuously for the theater of G20 and G7. And for that, we are a little bit involved and think it's necessary to discuss international some issues. The first issue for me is, what is the function of a hub? Turkey will be a hub. When we were 3 weeks ago in Riga at the Energy Minister Conference of the European Union, who said, we are the new hub, Greece. When I discuss with my Italian colleagues, they say, we are a hub. When I discuss in Switzerland, all say, we are the next hub in electricity and also in the gas sector. Okay, let's discuss what's a hub, what's the motivation that everyone wants to be a hub? Do we think it will be the possibility to get extra profit? Is it possible that we all have some ideas what the hub should be. My Ukrainian colleagues told me, it's clear, we need good infrastructure, we need international connection, we need also storage, but storage is not national-wide necessary. We can work together on European side. And on the other side, we need a political system that is stable and clear. That are the main functions. For that, I think Turkey has the importance to bring new gas, not from old sources, but from new sources to Europe, because it's clear security of supply is one of the main issues also in the future of Europe. The second wish from me to this G20 summit is, let's do a step to the COP Paris. Make first discussions, make first compromises, so that Paris will be a success. The other side, I should also say here in this Sabancı University, it could be interesting that also during this Turkish presidency we do more in research, and we discussed, as we heard it from Japan, what are the new elements, what we will do in the electricity mobility, in transportation, what we will do in other important sectors for energy consumption, like in the building sector for the future. Could we go together some steps forward for more efficiency in the mobility sector, in the housing sector, but also in the industrial sector? That would be necessary. Thank you.